All right, so the numbers out of Alberta continue to go up, but same as before, they're only going up in the Calgary area. It looks like a little bit in the South Zone as well. But again, Edmonton, I think Edmonton even went down a little bit, but I'm not 100% sure. I know they were a little over 200 yesterday. But again, more people are hospitalized in Edmonton. But again, um, just 68 people in the hospital. I believe that's like less than one person per like hospital in Alberta. So again, the idea that we have anything to worry about is still very, very exaggerated. And like I always say, there's always people that are panicking. Again, no matter what, people are panicking. And again, the other thing too is that I'm not even necessarily sure that these are honest numbers too. Like we've seen, so I'm going to talk about another story. We've seen plenty of stories out of many countries that show that the numbers are exaggerated. I'm seeing other stuff on the news saying that now the death totals in the UK are exaggerated. There's multiple ones in the states about them being exaggerated again. So I don't believe this kind of stuff at all, really. But again, I mean, they're at the very least fairly accurate. The reality is too is that they're more than likely being exaggerated because the government wants to be able to continue to mandate a lot of these crazy policies that they want to put in. I mean, it's looking like a lot of these governments want to make masks mandatory again. It's pretty hard to justify that um, when there's a drop in cases and when there's no real evidence for the cases making sense in the first place. Um, but that's kind of why they want to do that. But again, the main point being is that there's not a whole lot to be worried about. I really don't understand why people are so up in arms. But then again, I do understand because a lot of people are just paranoid and they'll believe whatever the government tells them. So yeah, that's kind of that. The numbers out of the states continue to go up as far as case totals go, but again, you need to take that with a grain of salt, especially considering what I'll be talking about next. But again, the death numbers are up a tiny bit, but they're still pretty steady. They're still under 1,000, which is better than what they had in April and May. So all the people that are super worried, um, there's not a whole lot to bear out here. There really isn't a whole lot to bear out, and it's like I say, this is just proving that the death rate it's just continuing to go down and down because they're having more cases, but the deaths aren't going up linearly with said amount of cases. But the big thing I wanted to bring up, this is from Steve Eager, and he says the state of Texas today had to remove 3,484 cases from its positive case count because the San Antonio Health Department was reporting probable cases for people never actually tested as confirmed positive cases. TDHS, what other departments make the same mistake? Now, again, that's the good thing he points out is that I guarantee you there's a lot of other areas that are doing this same thing. So this is why when I say you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt, um, that you need to take it with a grain of salt. And it's not just isolated incidents. We've seen tons of these incidents. We've seen it out of, just off the top of my head, Pennsylvania. There was a hospital in Florida, Texas now, and we've seen there's growing evidence that that's happening in the UK. We've seen that in Toronto. Again, that's just stuff I know off the top of my head. So it's clearly very, very likely that the numbers are inflated, and um, they're more than likely inflated because of an agenda. Like, why are we not seeing any cases of the numbers being underestimated or like misrepresented to be underestimated? Why are we not seeing any? I've yet to see any examples of that. I mean, maybe one probably exists, but I've yet to see any examples of that. And why? It doesn't make any sense. And the only way that it makes sense is if there's clearly somewhat of a conspiracy going on to make it appear worse than it actually is. Um, so that's pretty much what I wanted to bring up as far as that goes. But yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up. But again, the main point here being is that the numbers are inflated. Like we've known for a while the numbers are inflated, and we probably will never really know the real numbers because they're just going to keep lying. And the other big problem too is the whole this pushback for wanting to relock down and to mandate masks and all this garbage. Um, again, like I've mentioned before, but I really don't know how the average person can be so ignorant to literally support a policy that they were literally on the exact opposite side 3 months ago. Like I really don't get it. Like, but again, that just goes to show just how ignorant the average person is. And a lot of it isn't their fault, but I mean, it doesn't really matter whether or not it's their fault. The reality is that they're just that dumbed down. Again, because if you're someone who has any credibility whatsoever, you don't hold positions that you were literally like vehemently against 3 months ago. That doesn't make any sense. So, um, that's what I wanted to bring up as far as that goes. The next story I wanted to bring up is from Linda Frum, and she says if 100,000 students were recruited and logged even enough hours to earn the maximum $5,000 grant, that would only account for 500 million of the more than 900 million allocated to the program. So obviously, this is in reference to the whole we scandal with Justin Trudeau and all the liberals. And I really don't know how they thought they could get this one through. Like, what are they honestly that confident in themselves, or or in the fact that the media will cover for them, or what is it? Like, because like there's literally like $400 million that would have been unaccounted for, and we know that this charity has given money to Trudeau family members and given money to a lot of their higher ups. So it doesn't make any sense. Like it really, really doesn't make any sense. Like why would they try and pull a fast one here? Like I really don't get it. The reality is most likely is that they thought that they would get away with it, and if they didn't get away with it, that the media would cover for them, and that's the big problem. And the media is kind of covering for them, but it's so blatantly obvious. It's such high, blatantly obvious levels of corruption that it's pretty hard to be the CBC and get up there and pretend like, yeah, we're going to give our friends and buddies 400 million, split up $400 million of taxpayer money, and it's pretty hard to be CBC and try and pretend that there's nothing wrong with that. So again, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up as far as that goes. But again, it's just blatant, terrible, terrible levels of corruption. And again, it kind of falls on deaf ears because both sides do it. And again, this is the thing that the left gets completely wrong, in that they think that this kind of corruption is exclusive to right-wing politicians, when the reality is that it isn't. And the reason why I give the left such a hard time is that they support a bigger and more powerful government, which with largely unchecked powers. So again, if governments are naturally corruptible, like the left believes, then I mean, and I think they're right about. But again, the thing they're wrong about is that they think that left wing politicians are completely immune from this. In that, okay, well, if politicians are naturally corruptible, then we should try and make government as decentralized as possible. Again, so this is why the left deserves zero credibility whatsoever, like zero credibility whatsoever, because if they were right, or if they actually cared, well then they would want government to be more decentralized, not more powerful. So again, they're just flat out wrong about that. This is from kind of a parody account on Twitter, but they say Cuomo demonstrated that a Democrat could kill a state full of grannies and the media would still shill for him. And again, this is again where the mainstream media is at. That Cuomo is indirectly, directly responsible for most, or I don't know about most, but probably a lot of the deaths in New York, and over 30,000 people have died in New York. Like, um, and Cuomo probably is responsible for, I don't know, half of those. And yet, I mean, that's double the amount of people that have died in Canada. And yet, there's no mainstream media calling him out. His approval rating has gone up. Like, again, this just goes to show why politics and the way that the current system is done will never work. It will never work. The fact that a governor can make a decision that led to the deaths of at least 10,000 people, when making the opposite decision wouldn't have killed that many people. And there was enough evidence that you probably should have known that that would have happened, especially given the fact that only a handful of governors did it. Um, the fact that someone can do something like that just goes to show that our democracy it's never going to work. Like, democracy is never going to work. Again, I mean, you look at Justin Trudeau too. Like, I mean, the guy can do whatever he wants, and does that sway people from voting for him? Well, no, it really doesn't. So that's why, again, that's why it's never going to work, and that's why, again, I really just laugh at people who complain about corrupt politicians and corruption within politics and within all this kind of stuff, because again, I point out to these kind of people like ad nauseum that, oh well, government should be as decentralized as possible, and again, they inevitably laugh and be like, oh, we have to do it like this because if we don't, well, blah 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 blah. But then they turn around and complain again. They're the same people that support a big, giant, massively powerful government with largely unchecked powers, and yet they're the same people that are shocked and appalled when the government abuses those powers. Like, again, like literally, like, how stupid can you possibly be? Like, you supported the policies that led to this mess that we're in. And again, I'm at the point where I'm really kind of bothered with these kind of people. But anyway, again, like I say, it just goes to show the point we're at, basically. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is Southern Poverty Law Center now has 162 million stashed in offshore accounts. A lot of that's going to end up in the hands of their rich, overlords, kind of. And the SPLC is, I mean, I don't know a really good way of describing it, but they basically exist to race bait and to do the usual kind of race baiting stuff, basically. And again, I just wanted to point that out because again, the left is always, up in arms and complaining about, oh, corporate greed, and this executive got this massive severance when he screwed up and all this garbage, which again, I'm largely against. The difference is that the left is so hypocritical and there's such a double standard that they literally could care less when their side does it. Like, they could literally care less. So that's what I wanted to point out as far as this story goes. But and not only that too, that's money that people have. That's money, I believe, largely that comes through donations, which again is, they're kind of lying to people, which was where they're spending the money probably. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And the last few things, check me out on Twitter, Parlay, and BitChute. Very important you follow me on other platforms if you haven't already, so check those out as well.